All right, it's working. It looks like the mic lost connection with the computer because I was trying to mute and unmute it today, and it's obvious that that was the problem yesterday. Is at some point software said, "Bleh," and I was in a discombobulated state, having just come back after a procedure on Monday, so I didn't really notice it. So I apologize for being muted. Whatever I had to say wasn't very important, except that I did say that I enjoyed seeing you and seeing your comments and doing this live. So thank you for that. Anyways, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films if technology lets us. So, what do I got? What do we got? Let's check this. Okay. Let me change this real quick. We've seen this like 4 years ago, so but we're gonna watch it again because it's really good and it's about volleyball, or is it?
Conversation. Talking with others is one of the most important things you do. When you know how to carry on a good conversation, you can have new interests. You'll find that conversation will lead you to new friends. And a good conversation is the key to a greater feeling of ease, knowledge, and fun. Like a good game, a good conversation can be pleasant for everyone. Someone gets an idea. Someone else comments on it. Another disagrees. Still another adds his share. And so it goes. Everyone keeping his eye on the ball, following the topic, joining in, and passing it around. Let's listen to a conversation. See if you can tell what's good about it.
I'm sorry if I sound contrary, but I don't like it.
But, Jane, the community club has selected this plant for the summer camp.
I think it looks pretty keen. Why don't you like it, Jane?
Well, for one thing, I think the cabins are too far from the water. It's inconvenient. You have to go all this way down to the lake to go swimming, and then all the way back again to change.
I see your point, Jane. And I agree. I don't think anyone will like walking all that way back and forth.
Listen, everybody, that walk will give your body good conditioning. Sort of a warm-up for your swim. But seriously, you know, I can see where it wouldn't look very good for the cabins to be down here on the beach.
Maybe you're right. They do make a nice grouping up there on the hill, don't they?
Now, what was good about this conversation? Some of its qualities you can find in any good game. First, it's inclusive. Everyone participates. Second, it's spontaneous, lively, and free. Third, it's pleasant, interesting, and enjoyable. And fourth, it's profitable. Something can be learned from it. And a good conversation, like a good game, can mean more friends, new interests, a greater feeling of ease and fun. What about a conversation like this?
It's a funny-looking thing, isn't it?
Well, it looks like it'll be great swimming. Say, did I ever tell you about the time
hat, Laverne? If you think you can swim, you ought to see me. I wonder what's on at the show.
Well,
I don't know.
Now listen to this. You don't know what you're talking about. Why, I always know what I'm talking about. Why, there was one time when my folks and I were coming back from New York in the car, you see, and they didn't see the road sign that pointed toward the city. So, but I told them, you see, and if it wasn't...
There's almost everything wrong with this conversation, isn't there? When you don't know how to talk with others, you miss out on fun, friends, and a chance to learn something. A good conversation, like a good game, depends on skill. You have to know how to keep the ball going, how to handle it. Let's see what each person must do to make a good conversation. First, be courteous. Remember how polite and friendly each member of this group was? Courtesy was expressed in phrases such as,
I'm sorry.
Why don't you like it, Jane?
But seriously,
and all spoke in a pleasant tone, on a pleasant topic, showed interest in one another's remarks, and kept a cheerful attitude. You can feel at ease in a conversation where everyone is courteous. Second, include everyone. Each of the persons in this conversation addressed his remarks to the whole group, or to different members at different times, instead of always to the same person.
They do make a nice grouping on the hill, don't they?
I agree with Jane.
listen, everybody.
Third, respect others' opinion. Be ready to consider another point of view instead of ridiculing or flatly contradicting. Here are some handy phrases to remember.
I see your point.
I can see how it might.
Maybe you're right.
Fourth, contribute. Remember how each member of this conversation spoke up and contributed something to the discussion?
For one thing, I think the cabins are too far from the water. It's inconvenient.
I don't think anyone will like walking all that way back and forth.
Why, that walk will give your body good conditioning.
Fifth, stick to the subject. Remember how, from the beginning of the conversation
I just don't like it.
to the end,
It might not look very good to have the buildings down here on the beach.
each person stayed with the subject. Finally, be a good listener. Don't try to do more than your share of the talking. Remember how the members of this group were all interested listeners? Being a good listener is an important part of knowing how to converse. Now, let's look back at that other conversation. Do you think they practiced the rules?
Well, it looks like it'll be great swimming. Say, did I ever tell you about the time I
like my
swam?
new hat. Oh, look, if you think that you can swim, you ought to see me.
Well, no.
Say, I wonder what's on at the show. Oh, let's play checkers.
You don't know what you're talking about anyway. Now, you just listen to me.
Is there
I
courtesy?
remember one time last...
Do they stick to the subject? Is there respect for others' opinions?
road sign that pointed toward the city. They were going to miss the city entirely. But I told them, oh, yeah, because if I didn't tell them, you know, why... we were...
Are they good listeners? Do all contribute? Does the conversation include everyone? Yes, you get along better if you practice the rules of good conversation. Make a following these rules whenever you speak with others. Can you recognize these rules in action? Look for examples of being courteous, including everyone, respecting others, contributing, sticking to the subject, and being good listeners.
What do you think of the plans for the new campsite?
Oh, I like it.
Well, what's good about it?
Well, Archie and I didn't like it at first, but Woody convinced us it's pretty good.
Yeah.
There, see?
Well, you haven't told us your opinion yet, Diane.
Well, I don't know. I just don't like it. Of course, we can't always agree. Say, did you see the picture of the new motorboats in the paper this morning?
Weren't they beautiful? But just why don't you like the camp plan? Four of us are for it.
Well, I don't know. I just don't like the picnic tables over here. And maybe there could be a road coming along this way, on into the back of the cabins.
How much would a road cost? I don't think the community could afford one. And I can just see us out there now with picks and shovels.
When you follow the rules, when you practice the skills, you can have a good conversation, one that is spontaneous, inclusive, pleasant, and profitable.
Say, when do they expect to have the camp completed?
Next summer, I hope.
Boy, I'll say. And we'll have to have a picnic the very first day the grounds are open, too.
Yeah, that's all right with me.
That'd be all right.
Maybe fish fry.
I heard from the state
Runners look at their hobby, or whatever you want to call it, as a way of life, and they just keep running, and they, you know, whether or not they're competitively at their best or not, want to keep running. I run because deep down inside I love to run. You know, you are what you do, and I choose to run, so I am a runner.
Now that a lot of us have been running for a while, I guess we're pretty much thinking the same thing. How can we improve? How do we learn to run faster? And does it ever get easier?
Yeah, I think that you can really improve tremendously by leaps and bounds after you've gotten this initial base of, let's say, a year or two of running once a day. And ways to do that are to do more hill work, to do speed work on the track, which is what they call interval training. So you run a certain distance at a faster pace, then jog very slowly, do several sets of that. Or else you can do what they call fartlek. You go out on the roads and change your pace and vary your pace, slow, fast, maybe walk a little, that sort of thing. Those are all different methods. Or you can always try working out twice a day if you've got the time. That'll really bring fantastic improvements.
The body has to learn to adjust to this stress, but then you also need some recovery in between. And I think if you tax your system in some way, whether it be through hill workouts, whether it be through track workouts, intervals, even endurance, doing long distances, your body is going to adjust. It's going to be able to take the new loads as long as you give yourself recovery in between to rest. It will get better.
And I think after you've been running for a while, maybe a year or two, then start experimenting with different terrains, trying to integrate some, not too steep a hill, but something with a moderate grade, and something that's not too stressful, that you can adapt to pretty easily in your training workout.
Fartlek is a Swedish word. It means speed play.
It's a very effective workout. For example, Gail Barron and her husband often practice it, and she's one of the top marathoners in the country, hates any kind of track work. So what they do is they'll go out on a run, which most of the time they're taking a very steady pace, and they'll put bursts of speed where for maybe 400 yards, 440 yards, they'll run towards an object at a specific pace that they want to do, whether it be race pace, whether it be above race pace, and then get to this object, and then you rest again and do an easy pace jog. You then might want to do a sprint. They'll pick up and do maybe a 100-yard sprint or a 200-yard sprint. And it's a constant speed play. It's a lot of fun if you hate tracks. It's especially fun on cross-country trails to do something like this.
And hill running can be very, very effective. A good workout might be to run up a moderate incline fairly hard, and then when you get to the top, turn right around and jog back down again. Repeat this 8 to 10 times, and then finish the session off with an easy jog down. You have to be careful going downhill always. There's always a risk of turning an ankle or pulling something. Okay, here's a slow motion shot of Bill Rogers running uphill. Bill is one of the world's finest distance runners. Notice his exaggerated arm motion, and notice how hard he's pushing off with his legs. Also, he's leaning nicely into the hill.
If you want to get involved in competition, that sort of thing, you can always join what they call fun runs, which are not so competitive. They're more for fun, but they'll be about 2 miles long, 3 miles long. And I wouldn't recommend people to begin their racing program with a marathon. Begin with 2, 3, 5-mile runs. And I would do that for a year or a couple of years. I didn't run my first marathon until I've been running for 10 years. So I would say that you have plenty of time always ahead of you to experiment with the long ones.
One important thing which sometimes is overlooked is running style. A smoother flow, less excess energy being put out will make you run smoother and go faster. You want to concentrate on rhythm with the arms, a rhythm in your running. They say that running starts with the arms. And you want to think of landing, this is for racers now, not for beginners, but more up on your foot rather than just the heel. And you want to go smoothly, not up and down, not choppy. And I think that the better your style, the more efficient you will be all around. Probably one of the better things to do is to actually just sit down and watch some of your better runners. Watch how they run. Watch their body motion. Go to a track where you know maybe a coach is going to be coaching a college team, and just watch some of the better runners.
Tomorrow, these women will be running in a championship race. They're the finalists from the Bonnie Bell 10K Road Race Series. 10K, or 10 kilometers, is a distance of just over 6 miles. And some of these top competitors will be completing the course in 32 or 33 minutes. Some of these women have had track and cross-country experience in high school and college. Yet others are marathoners and rarely compete on the track. Depending on which events they're training for, they'll run between 60 and 110 miles a week. About 10% of that will be all-out speed work, fast running, and then the other will be moderately paced runs of various lengths, 5, 10, 18 miles. Before running, they always do some stretching exercises. This is helpful in keeping the body in balance and also, most important, to prevent injury. Then after stretching, they do some jogging warm-up, maybe 10 or 20 minutes of that before they begin their workout. What we're going to do this morning is do some slow-motion film studies of these runners. And then we'll have John Babington, coach of the Liberty Athletic Club, critique some of the styles.
This is Chris Lavallee. She's a very versatile runner. She runs the 1,500 meters well, the 800, 3,000. She's good at 10,000 meters, and she holds the Canadian women's marathon record. Her style is easy and relaxed. Nice, low, loose arm motion. She swings those hands just past the hips. Smooth, efficient stride, not too bouncy. Keeps herself nicely in balance. But good runners don't always have perfect style. Here comes Mary Shea. Her form is quite unconventional. Her head has a tendency to tilt over to one side, as you can see. Mary's form isn't that smooth. You'd have to say that she's asymmetrical. But somehow all those motions fit together in such a way that she gets great, great results. If I were coaching her, I'd be very hesitant to tamper with her form. This is Marty Cooksey. She's not very big, but there's a lot of power in that stride. Notice her typical distance runner's stride. Not a very long stride, but she takes more steps per minute. It's a very compact style. Marty is relatively new to running, but she's one of the finest American women road racers ever. She's the national marathon champion and does extremely well in the shorter distances also. But, though, this is interesting. Look at what her feet do as she runs toward us. Look at that little flip in her foot just before it strikes the ground. I couldn't begin to say exactly what effect that has on her running, but it certainly is interesting. Also, notice that her left leg tilts in slightly. The leg is not completely vertical at the moment it strikes the ground. And that foot wiggle could be a compensation for that. In fact, it probably is. Here comes Ruth Caldwell. Ruth is the national 800-meter champion. She specializes in short, fast races. She's running here in her training flats and at a 10,000-meter pace. She's landing at about the middle of her foot, and her stride is not particularly long at this pace. Now Ruth is running in her spike shoes, her racing shoes, and closer to her 800-meter race pace. Notice the difference. Here her feet kick back much higher, her arms are much more active, and her stride is much longer. Yet she's not really in the air that much. See how smoothly she's running. She's landing more on her toes, yet not bouncing. She's almost skimming along. Now, this type of stride would be inefficient in a very long distance run. This type of stride tires out the muscles very quickly. But it's definitely the fastest way to get from the start to the finish in a shorter race.
This is Mary Rodriguez, whose first race was a year and a half ago, the Bonnie Bell race in New York. She's lost a lot of weight, and she's gotten a lot faster in her running. But let's look at her style.
She's a very hard-working runner, but perhaps she's trying a little too hard. Look at those clenched fists. Actually, her legs are quite relaxed, but from the waist up, there's a little too much tension. Relaxation is often a problem for a beginning runner. It's something that sprinters have to learn as well as marathoners. But there are little tricks you can play on yourself. As you're running along, you can ask yourself, are my facial muscles relaxed? Do my shoulders and neck muscles feel nice and relaxed? Are my arms loose? You can shake your arms out just for a second, just to give yourself a feeling of relaxation. You can check your hands to make sure that they're not flopping around, but that your fists aren't clenched too tight either. Just try to maintain an overall feeling of relaxation and smoothness as you run along. Actually, your running style, though, will pretty much take care of itself. Just keep at it and enjoy it.
It's important to have a well-rounded training program, to do stretching exercises after you run. Some before would be helpful also. To have a good pair of shoes with good cushioning, to run on grass or dirt surfaces, like we see here around the pond. Stay away from concrete, and don't increase your mileage too soon. You have to build up very slowly, which is the major thing I'm emphasizing. If you want to improve, the only way to really do it is through consistency and moderation. You can't do it through an intense program really quick. No one's ever done it that way. Your body just won't take it. It'll quit on you.
I think that races are the reward, and I don't think anyone should deprive themselves of that pleasure. You put in all that training, and what is it for? What is it about? It's to prepare, to go out and take the test, run the race, see how good you are, see where you stand.
On race day, Jacqueline Hansen, one of America's great distance runners, was on hand. We asked her to tell us something about the race, and if she could, pass along a few tips about racing technique and strategy.
When thinking about getting into the actual race, it's important to plan it out exactly what you want to do.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You have to think about what's a conceivable pace to run. What kind of a time are you capable of doing? at any given time in your training. Pick a goal, and you plot it out. How many minutes a mile does that require? And then you listen to the mile marks in the race, and you try to see if you're on pace. It's very important to not go out too fast, as much as it's, not to go out too slow. But it's something you have to think about before you get to the starting line.
4,524 runners, everybody. Let them know what you think.
This race was definitely a major event. It was a major thing in several different senses. One, that we had 4,500 women out there running. That is a social phenomenon, perhaps. But we also had the very highest quality number of runners that I've seen in one given race. This is why I think it's really exciting to see a women's only race, because they get the due recognition. It is their event. They're on the front line. They get the good positions. They get first grab at the aid stations. They get all their splits. They get to break the tape first. It appeared to me to be maybe the youngest, fastest field going. A lot of them have come up from track background, and I think that's why we're seeing records dropping in the 10 kilometers, because we're seeing milers and cross-country runners running 10,000 meters. And I think that now we're beginning to see the product of collegiate running programs, high school running programs. We're beginning to see some results. The race started in the Boston Common and went down Charles Street and over the Longfellow Bridge. By the first mile, there was a good, healthy pack of, including like Elizabeth Berry, Marty Cooksey, Chris Laval, Karen Bridges, Joan Benoit, and Betty Springs.
So, at the first mile mark, we've got a time of 5 minutes, 14 seconds, which is right on the money. That's going out pretty fast, but the first mile out, the first and most important thing that these runners want to do is get out clean and have some free running room.
It's critical to get out fast at the start, to go with the leaders, if that's your intention, to run with the lead pack, because they'll slow down as much as you will. Everyone will get tired at the same time, but if you're 50 or 100 yards back, you may never catch up. It's difficult to catch up. It's easy to stay with a pack, but it's difficult to catch a pack. It seems to me that this is a big progressive step in women's running. This was one of the first times I have actually seen a race with this quantity of women and this caliber of women at this distance, where there was some real strategic running going on. There was some very intelligent running going on. Usually in the past, we've seen races where a few people go out too fast and then burn out at the mile. They don't really know what they're doing. It seems like the runners sort of string out in hopeless abandon, and they finish in that order. And this race was not like that at all. The women's running has really moved into another whole plane, and it's really exciting to see. It was like watching a competitive men's race, but they've had a lot more experience at this. There they were, 4 miles all together. 8 of them. It could have been anyone's race, but they were all working off each other. They all had this mutual respect for one another, and they were all running intelligent races. Nobody was going to take it out too fast, and yet they were all looking for their best times. They weren't dogging it either.
Now let's take a look at the 4 mile mark. In the lead, we've got number 4, and that's Karen Bridges from Stillwater, Oklahoma. He was third at the national.
Making a move in the latter stages of a race can really work to your benefit, if you're capable of doing it, and if you're confident. You don't waver at all. If it means passing somebody, you pass them quickly, and you put enough distance so that they don't go with you. They don't draft off you. Joan Benoit said she knew at 5.5 miles she had to make a move. She had to break away, just, to get that distance between them. When Joan Benoit made her move, I think she did take the 3 of them with her. They pulled away, but maybe because Joan was making the intentional move, it became her game, and they were going to have to try to play it. The first 3 runners were all from North Carolina. They knew each other. They knew how each other ran, and they would each say the same thing. Joan said, I knew I had to stay on Mary because if she's anywhere near me at the end, she can out-sprint me. Mary was saying, I know I have to stick with Joan Benoit. She's so strong. I know I had to sit with her. And Ellison Goodall knew who she was up against. They all knew.
And I decided, if you're going to run, you got to get up with them now. And I made a move and got up with them and then just stuck tight. And then from there on, it was Joni, Mary, and me pretty much fighting it out. It seemed like the 3 of us. I think Marty was pretty close behind us. But the 3 of us were just going strong. Really, it felt great. It was great fun. I just felt really good. But Joni was tough, and she put in a really strong lift down Commonwealth, and really blew me off. I couldn't keep up with her. If I hadn't let that distance separate, it could have been a closer finish because I never really gained it.
Joan Benoit in the lead.
And she stayed really strong. She wasn't going to let me gain
Allison
it.
Goodall is in second place. 32:55 is the time right now. This is very, very fast time, everybody. Joan Benoit, Cape Elizabeth, Maine, is going to win the National Bonnie Bell 10-kilometer championship. Joan Benoit, everybody. Allison Goodall, second place. Her time, 33 minutes and 20 seconds. Look how close this is. Let these runners know you're around, everybody. Mary Shea is in third place. From North Carolina, number 11, Mary Shea in third place. Marty Cooksey in fourth place. Number 6, Marty Cooksey. Number 4 is Karen Bridges from Stillwater, Oklahoma, winner of the Denver Bonnie Bell 10K race.
I thought the race as a whole just went splendid. It was just a beautiful production. The whole race went so smoothly. You know, the only thing that went wrong, of course, was that funny little incident where the car drove over the finish line in 15th place, and everybody was baffled as to how it even got there. But, you know, it was no big tragedy.
Were there a lot of people on the course?
It is true. The camaraderie is great. It's just, I mean, if I take anything away from running, it's the friends I've made just make it so worthwhile. And they're also warm. I think runners are really, you know, warm, neat, stable people.
As we would pass, we would come this way, and most of the runners were going that way. You know, they all go like this. I don't know about you guys, but I was going, hey, way to go.
When the pack came by here.
Although, when the gun goes off, it's not crush, kill, destroy, but competitive spirit comes forth, and you go to it. You're your own man then, and you run.
Race, 77 years old, Ruth Rothbard.
I began my racing at the age of 75. No, it was 76. 76 years old. And since then, I really enjoyed running. It did something to my way of life that I've never had before, never experienced it. I'm hoping to do more and better in time to come. And I think I will. I really do. I am a runner.
So Mary Shea, and she had a sister who was also a runner, Julia. They both went to Cardinal Gibbons High School, which was a Catholic school in Raleigh, and they both went to NC State. So, my alma mater. All right, what are we looking at? It's hard sometimes, but here's a film that tries to define democracy. Enjoy.
In many ways. We would all agree that democracy includes government by a majority. Each of us sharpen up our ideas of democracy. We know that democratic words and forms have been written into laws. But it is the way people practice democracy that really counts. Let's ask this man about he is a specialist who studies communities and the way people live in them. He goes about his job scientifically, observing, recording, analyzing, and reporting. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Students of society have been reporting their observations and analyses for a good many centuries. And as yet, there is not one single definition of democracy that they would all accept. There is one point, however, they would all agree on, and this is it. In thinking seriously of democracy, one must define his words carefully and use them consistently. When you have your own definitions clear, you know exactly what to look for in a community.
You can roughly locate any country in the world somewhere along a scale, running all the way from democracy to despotism. One community may be near the democracy end, another somewhere in the middle, and a third may be near the despotism end. The question is, what makes one community democratic? Is it the form of government?
Well, for one thing, avoid the comfortable idea that the mere form of government can of itself safeguard a nation against despotism. Germany, under President Hindenburg, was a republic. And yet in this republic, an aggressive despotism took root and flourished under Adolf Hitler. When a competent observer looks for signs of despotism in a community, he looks beyond fine words and noble phrases.
It stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Many observers have found that two workable yardsticks help in discovering how near a community is to despotism: the respect scale and the power scale.
Let's take respect first. A careful observer can measure on this scale how many citizens get an even break in a community. As a community moves away from democracy, respect is restricted to fewer people. A community is low on respect scale if common courtesy is withheld from large groups of people on account of their political attitudes. If people are rude to others because they think their wealth gives them that right, or because they don't like a man's race or his religion. In a democracy, respect must be shared. Sharing respect means that each shares the respect of all, not because of his wealth or his religion or his color, but because each is a human being and makes his own contribution to the community, from healing its sick or managing its railroads to running its trains. One sign of shared respect in a community is that everybody is given a fair chance to develop useful skills and the chance to put these skills to effective use. And there is shared respect if various groups in the community recognize each other's right to hold different faiths and opinions. A power scale is another important yardstick of democracy. It gauges the citizens' share in making the community's decisions. Communities which concentrate decision-making in a few hands rate low on a power scale and are moving away from democracy. Like France under the Bourbon kings, one of whom said, "The state, I am the state." Today, democracy can ebb away in communities whose citizens allow power to become concentrated in the hands of political bosses. Because true democracy can flourish in a community only if there is shared power. That is to say, only if many people have a share in making decisions that the community will support with force, if necessary. More specifically, you can say that power is shared wherever regular popular elections are authorized and are actually held. There is shared power wherever people actually get out voluntarily and vote.
and if they vote without interference or pressure from anybody. Look beyond the legal formalities of an election in measuring a community on a power scale to see if the ballot is really free. If the citizens can vote only the way they're told, a community approaches despotism. There is shared power if office holders are drawn from representative groups in society, if they include men from the farms, men from the law courts, men from the stores, men from the factories. In a democratic legislature, shared power shows itself in a strong opposition. Listen.
And that is why I'm confident the governor will have the support of the House on this bill.
Mr. Speaker, as usual, the honorable gentleman is quite wrong. He and the governor he serves so dutifully can expect no support for their policy from this House.
A strong opposition is made possible by an effective political party system. When legislatures become ceremonial assemblies only and have no real control over lawmaking, their community rates low on a power scale. In a downright despotism, opposition is dangerous whether the despotism is official or whether it is unofficial. The two most important signs of democracy, then, are shared respect and shared power. They, in turn, depend upon certain conditions.
The spread of respect and power in a community is influenced by certain conditions, which many observers measure by means of the economic distribution and information scales.
If a community's economic distribution becomes slanted, its middle income groups grow smaller, and despotism stands a better chance to gain a foothold. Where land is privately owned, one sign of a poorly balanced economy is the concentration of land ownership in the hands of a very small number of people. When farmers lose their farms, they lose their independence. This one can stay on, but no longer as his own boss. To the extent that this condition exists throughout a nation, the likelihood of despotism is increased. In past centuries, economic balance was improved when large feudal estates were gradually reorganized into independent farms as one part of the development of democracy. This creation of better economic balance aided the further growth of democracy. It is also a sign of poor economic balance in a community if it depends almost entirely on a single company, a factory, or a mine. If this condition exists over the nation as a whole, so that the control of jobs and business opportunities is in a few hands, despotism stands a better chance. Another sign of a poorly balanced economy is a taxation system that presses heaviest on those least able to pay. A larger part of a small income is spent on necessities, such as food. Sales taxes on such necessities hit the small income harder. In the days of the salt tax, feudal despotisms were partly sustained by this and other forms of sales tax.
A relationship between economic balance and democracy has been noted and reported for centuries by students of society. Aristotle said that a government made up of middle-income people has the best chance to be democratic. That was 2,000 years ago in Greece. And well over a century ago in America, James Madison warned that extremes of riches and poverty set group against group.
The social observers of our time have also noted that the development of democracy usually goes hand in hand with the growth of large middle-income groups. In today's world of giant technology, one of democracy's serious problems is how to maintain flourishing middle-income groups. Economic distribution, therefore, is an essential condition of democracy. Another one is information. A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, teaching in schools, and other channels of enlightenment are controlled by only a few people, and when citizens have to accept what they are told. In communities of this kind, democracy weakens. See how such a community trains its teachers.
Bear this in mind. Young people cannot be trusted to form their own opinion. This business about open-mindedness is nonsense. It's a waste of time trying to teach students to think for themselves. It's our job to tell them.
And when teachers put such training into practice, despotism grows rapidly. These children are being taught to accept uncritically whatever they are told. Questions are not encouraged.
How can you ask such a question? Have you got a textbook?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it say here that our law courts are always just?
Yes, ma'am.
Then how dare you question the fact? Sit down.
And so we aren't surprised when...
But it must be true. I saw it in this book right here.
And if books and newspapers and the radio are effectively controlled, the people will read and accept exactly what the few in control want them to. Government censorship is one form of control. A newspaper which breaks a government censorship rule can be suspended. Therefore, enlightenment is an important condition for democracy. As public education increases, democracy grows. In checking a community for democracy, we must find out whether it provides schools adjusted to the needs of its young people. But just being able to get books and newspapers is no guarantee of democracy. The newspapers of a real democracy meet these tests: balanced presentation of news, disclosure of source, competence of the staff. In applying these tests to newspapers, we find out, first of all, if they report both sides. If the news pages contain news only, and if opinion is kept for the editorial page. Next, we see if the paper says plainly who publishes and edits it, so we know which side they're on. Newspapers in a real democracy meet a third test: competence of staff. This test requires newspapermen to value accuracy and impartiality, and to interpret the news skillfully for the public. The competence test also requires newspapermen to use the services of experts.
I want 500 words on freedom of the press for our anniversary edition. How about it? But, Professor, you know more about the history of freedom of the press than probably any other man in the country. Yes, that's right. I mean the responsibility of a free press and other forms of communication like the radio and the movies to enlighten the people into democracy.
As George Washington said in his farewell address, in proportion as the structure of government gives force to public opinion, it is essential that public opinion should be enlightened. It is no less true today that enlightenment is an essential condition for democracy. What sort of community do you live in? Where would you place it on a democracy-despotism scale? To find out whether citizens get an even break, you can rate it on a respect scale. And to find out whether they share in the making of decisions, you rate it on a power scale. If you want to know what way it is likely to go in the future, rate it on scales for economic distribution and information. The lower your community rates on economic balance and enlightenment, the lower it is likely to rate on the respect and power scales. To make sure that democracy is safe in your community, first see whether you can find in it two distinct signs of democracy: shared respect and shared power. Then turn your attention to two important conditions on which they depend: economic balance and enlightenment. There is no standing still. The more economic balance and enlightenment, the more shared respect and shared power. Democracy is something that's never finished. If a community works to balance its economy, and if it works to enlighten its citizens, such a community can achieve shared respect, and it can achieve shared power. By working hard at it, the citizens of any community can achieve democracy.
All right. Well, that was basically a repackaging of the film Despotism, which we've shown a couple of times here. And yeah, that sliding scale, we don't do well on that sliding scale. We haven't done well on that for a while. So it requires constant work, constant vigilance. So that's all I'll say about that. I am probably tomorrow going to do my show at 2 because I have a lunch meeting. But I will be here live, 2 o'clock. Maybe I'll put a little reminder. But thank you for tuning in today. Thank you, William, for the donation. He donated via ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can also go via patreon.com/avgeeks or using the super thanks button. Or at the very least, hit the thumbs up. Hit the like button. Tell the world that you kind of like what we show. Even if you don't like specifically what we showed today, in general, you like the gist of what we're doing. That's what we like. I should say that I didn't mention it, but the running film reminded me of last weekend when we had the Krispy Kreme challenge, where everybody races to Krispy Kreme from NC State. They eat a dozen donuts and then they race back. I have not participated in this. There are quite a few people that barf when they do it. But it's kind of a wacky thing. But yeah, that's something to know about North Carolina, and specifically about Raleigh, is people are healthy and then they're not healthy at the same time. Anyways, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow, just an hour later. All right? Take care. We love you.